In light of this worldwide panic that is going on and the circumstances that are happening right now on Earth, I think it's time to get high. And no, I'm not talking about what you think, but keep watching all the way to the end because I'm going to describe how this is actually the perfect opportunity for you to do a very particular thing that's not only going to help you through everything that's going on right now, but this is something that is going to help you over and over and over again just as you go through life in general, even when this is over. That's coming up next. Hi there, my name is Dave and this is HeartSpace if you're new to the channel where we are releasing videos every single day to help you live life more in your way. So if that sounds good to you, hit that subscribe button and bell icon so you don't miss any of the videos that we do produce. And I would definitely recommend tuning in while all this is going on so you can get different perspectives, stay in a better energy, and just overall not be hooked in to the fear that's really going around right now. So before we start, I actually want you to write in the comments the mantra of I am raising my consciousness now. So just put that in the comments before we start. I am raising my consciousness right now. And again, the reason I invite you to do that is because through doing that, it allows you to think from a different perspective, shift into a different energy, rewire your brain to think differently, and also to start taking a little bit of action towards what we're going to be talking about instead of just passively allowing the information to go in one ear and right out the other ear. And so just write that down and we're going to get started. So it's time to get high, bro. You know, we need to get out the weed, we need to get out the mushrooms, we need to take out the ayahuasca. In fact, all three of those might actually be good under different circumstances if you do them and use them properly under guidance. But that's not actually what I'm talking about today. You know, I want to talk to you about an idea that I got from the book Power versus Force, which I recommended to you guys in a recent video titled This One Book is Changing My Life, or Has Changed My Life. It still currently is. And I went over some of the reasons why that book is changing my life, why I think it's a must read for most people. Like if you're on this self-development journey, if you want to move more from your heart, discover your passion, your life purpose, as some people say it, to be more kind, more generous, to be just the best version of yourself that you truly can be, to be your higher self, all of that, then this book is really just a must read. It is incredible. And I want to share an idea with you that is from this book that I think is very relevant to the times we're going through now. Because we all know right now people are panicking, people are in a lot of fear. And I can understand why, you know, they are being told to be in fear. They are being told things to elicit this fear response, where the corresponding action of that fear response is to go out and buy a ton of toilet paper or all the canned food in the stores, despite, as far as I can see, not really needing it. You know, I've heard of people like having 200 rolls of toilet paper, with my first thought being, well, you know, if there is going to be toilet paper shortage, shouldn't we allow it so everyone has some toilet paper and not hoard 200 where you're just going to have, you know, still 100 something left probably by the time this all is over and now other people can't buy it. But that's the kind of thing, the kind of action that happens when people are put into a fear state. And so the idea I want to share with you is from Power versus Force and this idea of consciousness. And he put this in such a great way, and it just gave me an aha moment because he went over the idea of being high. And he mentioned why a lot of people like to get high off of substances, so maybe it's hard drugs, maybe it's alcohol, maybe it's whatever else it is. The reason they do is because when under the influence of these drugs, they can calibrate you to higher levels of consciousness. For example, when you take a psychedelic, a lot of people experience these higher levels of consciousness. Some of them experience, as they say, different realms, things of this nature. But a lot of people also abuse those drugs, so it ends up being a detriment overall to their life. But he explained something in an incredible way where he said that you are actually high. You are going through the process of being high whenever you experience a level of consciousness above your homeostasis or default level of consciousness. And so let me explain what that means. Let's say that your normal level of consciousness is you're in a fear state. You're always in fear. Well, if you experience then anything higher than the level that fear is calibrated at, which I believe it's calibrated at level 100 or something, which is not that high, by the way, it's pretty low. Anything below 200 is catabolic, which I believe means life-destroying, and anything above 200 is anabolic, which is life-giving or life-supporting of life. I might have gotten those two switched up, but that's what it means. So essentially, anything under 200 is something that's going to lead you eventually down a path of destruction faster and faster the lower the level is. So 100 is fear. But whenever you're at that level and you experience something beyond it, you are literally experiencing a high, a temporary high usually, where you maybe get a glimpse of a consciousness level that's higher than yours. So let's say, for example, you're at the level of 150, which is the level of anger. So you can actually see that anger is above fear. It's actually, if you're in fear, anger is actually a very healthy next step because it's a higher level of consciousness, which would lead you to an even higher level, 175 of pride, and then 200 where you're getting to courage. And it's no surprise that once you get to courage, that's when you can start going into the more life-supporting emotions. And you also need that courage in order to, in a world that's mainly asleep, or in a world where most people are below the level of 200 and therefore that's where the status quo is, you need that level of courage in order to get to the other levels, which is stuff like reason, joy, love, things of that nature. Peace at level 600, for example, love being at 500. And so, for example, if you're in anger, but you get this moment of love, you just feel pure love, and you're operating in that moment at the level of 500 for whatever reason. Maybe, you see someone who's incredibly angry, but then someone does something that's so selfless, so amazing, like restores their faith in humanity. They do that to them, and they just, in that moment, feel so much love. They're just overwhelmed with love. If you've ever been in that kind of situation, you'll recognize that it feels very much like a high. It actually, for me, I've been experiencing this a lot. I don't know where I would calibrate. I would hope above 200. But I was experiencing while doing certain breathing exercises for an hour recently, and I'm going to make a video on those as well. During these experiences, at a certain point, usually like 20, 30 minutes in, I start experiencing just an overwhelming, in a good way, level of love calibrated at that level. And because it's higher than what my default is, I'm not yet at the point where I'm feeling love all of the time, where that's just my default. That's where I'm moving up to. That's where I hope to get to. And that's where I know I can get to. But I'm not at that point yet. And so as I'm experiencing these levels of consciousness that are higher than what my default are, I'm experiencing a high. I'm experiencing something that is almost indescribable, almost like I'm being transported to a completely different frequency where my perspective is shifting, my energy is shifting, the way I see things, which is my perspective is shifting. So that's a bit redundant. But the point is, when you experience higher levels, that is you actually going through a high in consciousness, and it's the same effect, because when you take a psychedelic, a drug or whatever, you are experiencing higher levels of consciousness in that moment as you take the drug. But the trick is, when you're doing it through other means, you're recognizing that these levels of consciousness, these feelings, these highs are within you. Everything you need to feel high, so to speak, to experience higher levels of consciousness or even get to those places on a more default level permanently, is all within you. Reliant on external sources can become such a crutch that they actually can make it so that you're on lower levels of consciousness by default and need or become addicted to just using a drug or something else to get to those higher levels. Even using a teacher, for example. Many people looking at so-called gurus or religious teachers or whatever who may be operating at very high levels. But if you're using them as a crutch to get to those levels and then can't do it on your own, then it becomes something that's outside of you and something that can actually end up being a detriment. But during this time of crisis, I think one thing that can be such an opportunity for so many people is being able to raise their levels of consciousness, to exercise more empathy, to become more aware of what's going on, to be more introspective, to meditate, to rest, to allow themselves to stop being busy, and to actually look within themselves and experience these higher, higher levels of consciousness. And so during this time when a lot of people are panicking, you can make the choice, instead of panicking, which again, guys, panic is going to be on a very low level of consciousness. Fear is at 100, it might be even lower. And when you're panicking and you're in that state all the time, you're just going to be moving up and down these lower levels. You might get up to anger at 150, but you're not going to really get much higher. And again, this is not life-supporting levels of consciousness. This is something where, again, people just go and hoard toilet paper or hurting people. I think I even saw a clip, I can't remember how I came across it, but I saw a clip of someone fighting someone else, or a couple people fighting people for toilet paper in the store. That only manifests